Community volunteers Karen Rudolph and Lisa Brennan, as well as Rabbi Daniel Bogard. Karen Rudolph is the wife to Steve for 34 years, mother to a daughter, Alyssa, grandmother to 2-year-old Austin and 1-year-old Kate, and proud mom to her transgender son, Jason. He was 15 when he told his parents that he was transgender. In a search for answers to an avalanche of questions, Karen and her family found Transparent. They were a source of strength, compassion, and assistance in navigating all it takes for Jason to transition into who he was meant to be. She and her family have learned so much and hope to be a source of support for others. In January of 2018, Lisa Brennan started a new chapter of life as her youngest child shared with the family that she is a transgender woman. After some adjustment, the Brennan family has found that when you treasure someone for who they are, it is magical and sacred. Lisa wrote a beginner's guidebook for family and friends, and to her surprise, it was widely shared with churches, hospitals, and schools, asking her to share her family's adventure of love and acceptance. This prompted Lisa to write a book about her family's journey and hopes it and her speaking engagements will spread some love and education into the world. Daniel Bogard and I have a 30+ year history. He and my daughter were good buddies in elementary school, and I would tell you all sorts of stories, but we don't have enough time for that. So Daniel, along with his co-rabbi and life partner, Karen, is a rabbi at Central Reform Congregation in St. Louis's Central West End. Whether in Peoria, where they were community rabbis, Cincinnati, where they worked at a USCJ shul, or at CRC, Daniel and Karen have always split both their 1.25 plus job and their parenting of their 3 kids. Daniel has taught at both Hebrew Union College and Bradley University. He has worked as the rabbi in residence of the Episcopal Diocese of Cincinnati, and his interfaith work in Peoria was featured in the documentary, The No Joke Project. Daniel will share his story of being the parent of a trans child. And without further ado, here are Karen, Lisa, and Daniel.
Hello, everyone. We're so glad to be here. It's actually such an honor, and it sounds like you guys are a great organization. The cool things you were talking about before we came on, just really, we want to thank you for all you're doing and for having us and letting us speak. I am Lisa Brennan, and Karen Rudolph is going to speak a little bit after me, and she and I are in the group Transparent. That's a national organization. We are in the St. Louis group, which is growing leaps and bounds all of the time. We'll talk more about that too, but I'll start us out and tell you a little bit about my journey. Our daughter Deirdre came out to us when she was 21 years old, and it was 3 years ago, and I had no idea where to turn, what to do. I ended up spending half my life researching and journaling, because while we accepted her immediately, I had a hard time thinking about how the world was going to treat her, her safety, what kind of life was she going to have. So, and Transparent was one of the first groups that I found too that was huge in helping us. But after she did not come out to everyone else for about 6 months, just to us, her brother, and her 2 best friends. And during that time, I journaled, researched. It was like a full-time job almost. So that when she did come out, what I decided to do was send a letter and a guide that I had written to our close family and friends. So that's how she put her thing on Facebook, closed her Facebook and said, I'm going for a jog. And I was like, don't you want to see what people are going to say afterwards? And she did it. She told her truth and went on out. And luckily it was a wonderful response. But I took that time to then send the letter and guide out to our family and friends. And that's when people were wonderful. And so many people started asking. They knew nothing about this. They wanted the knowledge. They were ready for the knowledge. Schools, churches. My friend works at a hospital and had me there and asked me to come speak. And so then I had one friend that was kind of telling me that I should put it together in a book, which I pushed the idea away for a while and then decided to do it. So the journaling and the research that I did all went into a book. This is my book. It's called The Auditorium in My Mind, Treasuring My Transgender Child. And what I'm going to do to start us out is read you the very beginning of the book back in January 2018. The book is a little different because I didn't do chapters, I did sections. The first section is called the sad part. There's a section called the pissed off part, about the world and how we treat trans people. There's a section called the beautiful part. So that's kind of how I put it together. The first one is just the beginning, and it's just so you can know how she came out to us in the beginning of our story. Okay, the first one is the sad part. January 2018. Oh, thank goodness, that's the last of the Christmas decorations put away. I get my house back, I laughed. Every year I tell my husband, I love everything about the holidays, love getting the house all decorated, but I also love getting my house back when we take it all down in January. My husband acts like it's new when I say this every year. Or maybe it is new to him because he doesn't really listen every year when I say it, whatever. Author's note. Author's note. This is kind of weird to put author's note because basically this whole book is an author's note, but let's just go with it. Author's note. I have pondered and pondered a way to write this next section with my daughter's correct pronouns because she is 100% a woman and our daughter. I always want to honor that, and it feels weird not using her correct pronouns. After pondering, and I discussed this with her also, I decided for the sake of this story and so that you may understand it better, I will have to go back for a few paragraphs only to what I thought was the truth in January 2018. So here's what I thought. All of it is true except for the major point of this story. Please bear with me and remember that for a few paragraphs, this is the Lisa Brennan of 2018 speaking. We are a close family of four. My husband, Mike, and I have been married for 30 years and have two sons, aged 21 and 26. They are both super smart. They're also musicians, and both of them have been in rock bands and church choir. The oldest, Connor, is a medical physicist who plays at a piano bar and is in a band. He has a master's degree in medical physics, and he's out on his own, and we love to visit. The youngest is a computer science major and music minor and won the top high school awards for musicianship. Additionally, he also won the award of Most Sincere at Heart at high school honors camp. As a child, he would stay inside during recess to help the cafeteria ladies clean the tables. He gave his allowance to buy Christmas gifts for the school maintenance staff. That's my kids in a nutshell. So that is what I thought was the truth in early 2018. I also knew that our youngest had been having a difficult time for the past couple of years, experiencing depression and seeking counseling. And in the back of my mind, particularly in late 2017, I had concerns and thoughts about our youngest child, thoughts that I buried deep because there was no way that could be true. End of author's note. Let's get back to our story. Okay, blah, 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 Christmas decorations down, etc. I was also happy to have those decorations down because I'd had the flu for the past couple of days. It was a Sunday and I had called in sick to work for the following day. I had discovered hot toddies a couple of days before this and they seemed to be helping. Or maybe it was just the bourbon in the hot toddy. Here's my recipe. Make a cup of hot tea, add a little lemon juice, add about a tablespoon of honey, add bourbon, however much bourbon you want. Are you almost ready to head back? It's starting to snow, I called out to our youngest. It was his last day of winter break. He had been home for a month now and we'd had a great holiday. Although I felt something underlying that I can't explain. As a mom, I guess you kind of know things, except I couldn't have really put a name to what I knew or felt, just something. Almost ready, he called back. I was happy to see he was bundled up in winter coat, hat, and scarf, and they had everything packed in his car. Author's note number 2, we live in a small town just outside of St. Louis, surrounded by woods and countryside. We don't get city water. My husband, Mike, has a pickup truck with a 500-gallon water tank on the back. A few times a week, he goes into town and hauls water back to us. We knew this was part of the deal when we moved in, so it's just a part of life. I decided to explain water hauling to you. Before I continue the story, you'll see that it's important shortly. End of author's note, and back to story. I was anxious for our son to get on the road due to the snow. Also, I felt really bad from the flu. I noticed he was kind of pacing around, looking nervous. I thought maybe he had lost something, a phone, cord to a musical instrument or something. I gotta go haul water, said Mike, and went to hug our son goodbye. That's when I noticed that the nervousness and pacing wasn't from having lost something. Our son told us that he has something to say. I will not go into the details of it because that is not my story to tell. I am telling my story, not hers. I will tell you that watching your child try to tell you something, but not being able to get the words out is one of the worst things I have ever experienced. My heart started going crazy and I sat down feeling knots in my stomach as somewhere way in the back of my mind, I had a feeling of what she was going to say. I heard myself say in a Stepford wife kind of way, "We love you. We love you and support you no matter what." She was still trying to tell us her truth, and the words were still not coming out very well. Mike coaxed her along to tell us what she had to say. Somehow, through tears and stilted speech, she let us know that she is a transgender woman. Again, I Stepford wived the words. "We love you. We support you in everything." My husband then said the following, "Well, I don't think you're the first transgender person in the world, right? Is this going to make you happy?" To which she managed a small smile and a nod. "Well then, we love you, support you, and nothing changes that. Now I got to go haul water." He hugged her, and that was that. She and I talked for a little while after he left on the road to water hauling. I hugged her and told her we were with her through all of this, and then she got on the road. That night, I Googled a million things. I found a support group in St. Louis called Transparent. I Googled LGBT counseling in St. Louis and found someone that looked like she could help me. I emailed her and said that our child had just come out as transgender and I was interested in some counseling. She emailed me back on a Sunday night and asked me if the counseling was for me or for my child. When I responded that it was for me, she typed back, "That is highly unusual. Most parents aren't willing to do that. I can see you for a free half-hour session on Wednesday." The next day, as I was homesick for the day, here is what I did. Number 1, cried. Number 2, drank hot toddies. Number 3, literally spent 6 hours researching everything transgender on the internet. At the end of the day, I texted our daughter some of the things I had found through my research. She texted back, "I can't tell you how much it means to me that you are researching this on your own. Here are a few other things you might want to look at." And she sent a couple of links. A few days later, after the flu was gone and I was back at work, still crying and researching at night, but off the hot toddies, I came home to find my husband with a card table set up in our living room. He was off that day and had prepared himself a fancy little meal. He's a great cook. He had a glass of wine sitting out in a fancy wine glass. "What's all this about?" I asked. He replied, "I am celebrating that our child is finally free." So that's the beginning. That's the beginning of our journey and our story. And obviously a lot has happened since then. And she is a thriving, happy computer science graduate, age 24 now. And I'm going to pass it over to Karen Rudolph now. And any questions you have, we'll be happy to answer later. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having us, first of all. Lisa and I have done this several times, and every time I enjoy it, and every time I am thrilled that people are interested enough to come and learn these things, especially if you don't have a transgender child. I think learning about it is key. Learning about it helps the child, helps the parents, and helps the community. There's no reason not to. When my son came out, he was, I don't know, probably 16. And he said that he was transgender. It was right around my daughter's wedding, and he was supposed to be a junior bridesmaid in the wedding. And I found him crying about having to wear the dress. And I said, "You don't have to wear," and I didn't know at the time. I just knew something. He just didn't want to, he just was never a dress person, even when he was little, never dressed. So I said, you don't have to be in the wedding. You don't have to do this. And then he told us that he thinks he's transgender. And also another interesting fact is when they tell you, they have known for a long time. They are so far ahead of you. I had to say, okay, well, we love him. I mean, he is a great kid, always was a great kid. Didn't really have depression, but I could tell something was off. But after he told us that, the change that you see and the progress that they make as they transition is amazing. The first thing I did was I really didn't know what to do. I called someone and they suggested going to my gynecologist. So I said, well, here's a sentence I never thought I'd say. I have to take my son to the gynecologist. So we made an appointment. The girl that I went to was fantastic. She suggested hormone blockers and every 3 months. So that's how we started. And a lot of things that people don't understand is some of the things that when they transition is permanent, some of them is reversible. So all the hormone blockers do, which is one of the healthcare things that they're talking about now, that they're trying to block, all it does is stop them from developing as the gender that they were born. So that gives them time to think, it gives us time to, find help and to find out exactly what these kids don't just wake up one morning and say, I'm a boy and let's do something about it. We're going to the doctor. I need to get medicine. There is a whole slew of, we went to the OB, we started the hormone replacement, which once they get off that, everything goes back to normal. Their periods will start again, they will start developing. But in the meantime, we found the Transgender Center at Children's Hospital, and Dr. Christopher Lewis, who was brand new there also at the same time. We met with him, and first thing he said when we met with him to Jason was, tell me why you're here. What do you want? And he said, well, I want to be a dude. Just, that's it. And that was as simple as that. And that's all they want. So we started, they watched their medical history. They ask a lot of questions. They do a lot of research before they will start any kind of hormone therapy. That you have to go see a therapist. You have to see a psychologist. You have to get letters signed off on. So Jason knew exactly the process he wanted to take. So I was just following what he was telling me. He was saying, okay, now we need to go, we went to the Transgender Center. Now, after he started his hormones, they have to test his blood every 3 months. He has to make sure that the hormone levels are normal. He was in high school then, and then he graduated in 18 and he went away to college. And by the time he went away to college, he had his top surgery. He was a guy. He had the facial hair. He had the lower voice. The things that I learned from him as he's learning about himself was amazing. I learned things I never thought, and did things I never thought I would do. But he's an amazing child, and that's just really all they want. They just want people that say, boys don't belong in girls' bathrooms and girls don't belong. People are not afraid of transgender people unless, they should get to know them and get to know what they're there for. All they need to do, they just want to go in the bathroom. They just want to go to the bathroom. They want to get in, they want to get out. What people are afraid of are predatory people that has nothing to do with the transgender community. There are scary things that will happen. But I think with more people learning about transgender community, I think it will help everyone. He is off at college now. He's a senior. He wants to do social work. Right now, he is just started a volunteer for the helpline. It's called SQUISH. It's SQSH, St. Louis Queer Support Helpline. It's not a hotline or a suicide line, more of just the LGBT community being able to talk amongst each other and talk to someone that understands what they're going through. He can talk to me. He can talk to, we went and saw a rabbi. We met with the doctors. But to talk to someone that's going through exactly what you're going through. Jason happens to go to the same school that Lisa went to. It was unbelievable when Lisa and I started talking. The things that we had in common was unbelievable. She said, my daughter is at Illinois State University. I said, that is where my son is going next year. So they were up there for a while. So they got together at college. They were able to hang out and do things together. They are friends now. All the people that we talked to, I talked to a pediatrician who is on the board of the Transgender Center, and she has a transgender son, and she gave me all kinds of avenues to, look into. So the community itself is amazing. We did go to Temple one time because the pediatrician that I belongs to, Cher Emmett, and Cher Emmett was having a speaker, and the speaker was my friend, and she was going to speak about her transgender son in front of the congregation. So I asked my son, did you want to go? We go to Temple every once, and we don't go every week. So we went to that temple to see. My aunts belong there. So we sat with them and we listened to her speak. Everybody came up to her after she spoke and just praised her. And we were driving home. I brought this tissue because I get emotional, but as we were driving home, he said, you know, I didn't know that you could go to church, temple, wherever your religious is, and have them be accepting of you. Everything that I've seen and heard of have been negative. You know, you don't belong here. God, you know, that isn't the way God intended you to be. You can't change. I mean, so he said, I'm so happy that I came, and I'm so happy to see that the people out there are accepting, and that's all they really want. I mean, it's amazing. They're amazing people. He's going to do great things. He's in the social work department, so he's going to end up helping people too, probably in the LGBTQ community. So I do appreciate all your time today. I'm going to go ahead and I think the rabbi is probably is he going to speak? I would like to hear from him.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Lisa. I haven't heard those stories, and they were really really moving. I am warning everyone in advance, I'm not going to get through this without crying.
I know.
It's like a unit, right? I know, it's totally, yeah. Every conversation about this, yeah.
Amazing.
So I'll share a little bit about our story and our journey with everyone, but as we start, I want to hold on to the fact that these are intimate, private things about our kids, and it's a balance of how much we need to tell their story to change the world, to make it the right place that they deserve to live in, and the balance of how much of their story we should be sharing publicly, right? I mean, these are intimate things. So we're always walking that line, and I just want to start with that. So our kiddo, he's now just about to turn 8, Ezra. He, from the very moment that he could make choices about what he wore, wanted boys' clothes. In particular, from like the age of 2.5 on or something, was routinely sneaking into his older brother's room, who's 2 years older, to steal his underwear, and would wear boy underwear. So that was sort of the first piece, but he always chose boy clothes whenever he could. And in fact, the biggest meltdowns that we had were things like, I think when he was 4, at Karen's grandmother's, my wife's grandmother's 90th birthday party. They bought, some fancy dresses for our twins to wear. And that was the biggest meltdown that I think we've had. Again, this was before, obviously, he'd articulated anything to us about gender. But all of which is to say that when he's about 4.5, oh gosh, I remember one night as we were doing bedtime and singing, the nighttime song to him afterwards, he goes, "Daddy, do you think God could make me over again as a boy?" And I remember walking back to Karen, like shaken, and saying, we're either going to remember this conversation for the rest of our lives, or we're not going to remember this at all. All of which, I guess, is to say that by the time Ezra came to us when he was 6, I guess, and said that he wanted us to use boy words for him, there was nothing surprising about it at all. It had just sort of been coming and been obvious. The name came about a month after that. We went through a rough draft of a name that was named after a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. So we moved on from that and came to Ezra, which we actually love. Actually, his old name never felt like it fit him ever. I mean, Karen and I had a conversation when he was 6 months old about, can you really change a 6-month-old's name? What? In the moment he said Ezra to me, I was like, oh, of course, that's who you are. So, it's interesting. He has not had trauma around gender. I mean, absent the Mimi's 90th birthday party. And so his experience and the experience of other kids their age who have just sort of been accepted from every moment is really different. It's a different kind of generational thing that's happening. We're really lucky that we sent our kids to like the most amazing school in the world, Merowitz. Let me tell you, when we sent Ezra back this year, so he came to us and told us, sorry, I'm just rambling here, but he came to us and told us that he was a boy the weekend before lockdown. So he never went back to school as a boy. And then we were like so utsy about sending them back to school because of COVID at the beginning of this year Their school opened in August or September. That like we never even had a conversation with the school about this whole trans thing. We just like filled out the name and the gender differently, and that was the end of it. There was no conversation at our school outside of just loving immediate acceptance. A lot of that goes to the work that another family had done with the school 2 years before. But it's an amazing place. And I can genuinely say that the only bullying that my 8-year-old child experiences because of his gender comes from his state legislators. And it's real what the state legislators are doing to our children and the real harm and the impact it's having. Actually, if it's okay, I want to talk a little bit about the sports ban. I think the medical treatment ban, actually, it's the wrongness of it, the immorality of it stands on its own. But in some ways, the sports ban is more pernicious, because the whole idea of the sports ban, when you really think about it, this is not an athletic issue, just to take it on its merits, right? Like this, we're talking about at most a handful of kids in this state, right? Is that really the most pressing athletic issue in our state? Clearly not. And so the reality is this is not a bill, or these are not bills about the 5 or 10 kids that this might theoretically impact in the state of Missouri who want to play high level high school athletics and are trans, right? Like, what this is a bill that forces otherwise good, thoughtful, loving people to start asking these questions in public. And the thing is, when you post on Facebook saying, you know, I kind of understand the merits of what happens is that discourse itself, that conversation itself is a communal conversation on the humanity and the human dignity of our children. And that is the point. The bullying is the point here. It's not about athletic fairness. Again, it's not about these 5 kids. It's about creating a communal discourse where the bullying of trans kids, amongst the most bullied kids in our society, we should say, is condoned by our politicians and by our government. Right, I don't know if people know, but in Missouri, the bill actually was to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot, which means not just that it's a bill that has to pass the legislature, but then it becomes something that every voter in our state votes on and everyone has a conversation on. And all of these trans kids, right, and I assume folks know the suicide rate amongst trans kids is terrifying. By the way, it drops down to basically the same as for cis kids if their families and their friends and their communities love and accept them for who they are. Right, this suicide is the result of bullying. Let's be clear about that. But that's what this constitutional amendment would do. It's not even particularly the kids it would impact directly. It's all of the conversations about the humanity of my child that it engenders. So I guess that's my spiel. That's been our story. We've been really involved in lobbying and testifying in Jeff City for a number of years now. And I will say that Jeff City, particularly this year, is maybe like the worst place I've ever been. It was back in February and March, and this was before vaccines had rolled out, and you would walk into a hearing room to have unmasked people tell awful, terrible lies about you and your child and your parenting, and sitting amongst, 90% of a room would be unmasked. It was unreal. I still feel like I have trauma from just having been there that day. So I will stop there.
Sheila Greenbaum wanted to ask a question of Lisa.
Sure.
Can you,
So first of all, thank you all for sharing very moving stories. So Lisa, I wanted to ask a question of you, given the excerpt from the book. So when you are talking about your daughter, but you're talking about, let's say, a family trip when she was 12 years old. So let's say at the time your child was named Mark and now your child is Mary. So would you talk about Mark? We took Mark and I don't know your other son's name, or would you always say Mary and, you know, we took
Yeah.
Mary to New York for the first time or something like that?
That is a great question. Yes, it's always, we talk about her when she was little and we say she, when she did this, when Deirdre did this, when Deirdre was a baby, always. At the beginning, when we didn't know how to do this, that was a weird thing too. It's like, what do we do when we talk about her? Because we saw it so differently then, but no, through the years, it's just gotten easy. Always Deirdre, always she. That's why that part of the book was so weird. And I had to go back and forth with my daughter on how to write it, because I said, I want people to be able to get it at the beginning, how we were seeing you then. And so that's how it was written like that, because at that time we obviously had her pronouns wrong, because she was assigned male at birth, but she's a woman. But yeah, that's a good question. A lot of my friends have asked that too. She's always Deirdre and it's always she.
I will
Well,
tell you
you know,
that
oh.
is one of the hardest things, is when you are talking about the past and when they're young, it is hard to say he, you know, in
Yeah.
that's one of the harder times.
Well, anyway, that's very helpful for me because I haven't I mean, I just haven't understood if the person, you know, sort of, it's kind of like 20 years ago, we sent a birth announcement. We had a boy, we got it wrong. I mean, you know, it's something like that.
Yeah, I've seen people do that actually. Yeah. So yeah, that's a really great question. But it took a while, but now it gets more natural as it goes. And our friends and family have come on board with it too. It takes a while, but yeah. Thanks for asking. That's a really good question.
I jumped right into the question, and I should have said thank you for sharing these very personal, wonderful, your stories. And I was very emotional, and I needed some Kleenex as well. But no, it's very good to hear what you've gone through and what still needs to be done. Do other people have questions? Joy? Hold on a second. Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
I just wanted to say that I wish every child that struggled with any issue, but in this case, particularly with a gender issue, could have parents like the ones that we've heard today. I think the world would be so much easier for them and for their parents and for all of us, if there were people like them. So I appreciate everything that you've shared with us today.
Very sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue?
I was going to say the same thing as Joy. Thank you, Joy, for saying it for me. But I also just want to say that I can only speak about one of the children that I know in this group, and the way in which he feels so secure with who he is and so proud of who he is. I was in his class last year. We didn't go into that room for a while because of health concerns. And when I was able to go in the spring, Danny's son walked up to me and he was talking to me. He said, "Do you know I'm trans?" And I said, "Yes, I do." He goes, "Okay." Like he wants people to know he's proud of who he is. And I think that has everything to do with how you and Karen have handled the situation and helped him be who he is. And it's just, we want that for every child. And, it's beautiful when you see it. And it's a wonderful thing.
I just want to throw in that it's also because of that amazing school. We threw, we called it Ezra Day for the 1-year anniversary of his transition, which we knew because it was, 2 days before the lockdown, which helped us backtrack and figure it out. And threw a little outdoor, socially distanced, et cetera, kind of party. And the school found out and his teacher found out, and the rabbi at the school knit him a trans pride kippah, which is traditionally is also traditionally gendered male, right? his teacher brought in trans pride colored icing to give to the kids to eat, and it's an amazing, remarkable place. And so I meant it deeply when I said before that the only bullies my child knows are those in Jeff City.
Mhm. I think that most of the kids when my son came out, all his friends knew way before I did. Hi.
He hears his name, and
Uh-huh.
if it were up to him, he'd be on the cover of Time magazine.
I wanted
Hi,
I wanted Jason to be here today, but he worked overnight, so he's a nighttime job. But I think it's the kids that are fine with everything. It's the adults that ruin it for everybody. They're the ones that bring the bills up. The kids don't care. The kids that are on the teams that they want to play sports on, they're like, sure, come on, let them play. I mean, that's all we're doing is they just want to play, and they just want to go to the bathroom, and they just want to be like every other kid. Jason is a boy, and he's so happy. And if you could see the happiness and you could see the change, and it didn't take much, it just acknowledgement. And his school was fine. We didn't really have a whole thing with school, but when he went away to college, he didn't know a lot of people up there. And I think that was his really new beginning, was to be able to go there and be Jason and not be, well, he used to be, all the kids in high school know him, and he has got so many friends now. He makes friends up there. He's got jobs. Everybody at school loves it. They're just great kids. So I saw that Amy.
Yeah, Amy.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to echo, because my child also goes to the same amazing school. And Daniel mentioned that there was another family that sort of did a lot of work a couple years before. And my son, and actually Daniel's oldest son, are good friends with this child. So I can speak from the perspective of a parent who actually didn't know any trans folks until I was introduced to this 7-year-old boy. And I mean, I had known this child when he was identified as a girl before. And I cannot emphasize how important it was that that it was just presented as like a norm. I mean, it's wrong to say that it was no big deal, but I mean, we got a simple email that said, this child has come out as transgendered. He will go by this name and these pronouns. If you have any questions, you can talk to us at the school. And as talking with other parents in that class and that grade, the vast majority of us were like, okay. I mean, and the kids were just like, okay. I mean, there were a few slip ups, and, they were very, because it started at the beginning of a school year and the child had gone by a different name, but, just generally a gentle reminder, not making a big whole, like a thing out of it, just saying, oh, he goes by XYZ now. I mean, there is such a thing as normalization of something. And I really do agree with what Karen said about a lot of times it's the parents that are freaking out. And I mean, just the way the kids themselves transitioned isn't the right word to use it, but the kids transitioned from really easily from calling the child one name to calling the child another name. And I asked my son, how is so-and-so doing? And he said, it's great. He's not, he used to like sort of lurk around on the sides and want to play with us at recess. And now he just comes on in and we all hang out, and in part because kids do tend to segregate themselves by gender. God knows why, but it happens. And so that child who seemed like lurked around the edges and didn't fully participate because before he wasn't identifying or presenting as a boy with all the other boys, got to really, I saw this child blossom and like just really, it was really neat and a privilege to to see that happen and to see the community rally around this child. So I think it's really, the more people make a big deal out of it, the worse parents freak out. And yeah, maybe we don't, I don't know how that gets replicated in schools that that don't start out with the same kind of nurturing community that we have, but I feel like that should be possible. And that's what I'd love to see happen.
I think it will eventually. I think it will. I think more of the people are going to just accept, and that's the thing. I was more scared for him than he was. He was just gonna live his life and he's a boy and that's the end of it. Well, I thought of what's he gonna do when he goes to college? Which dorm is he gonna live in? Because they do segregate in college. I have a boy dorm or a boy floor and a girl floor and a sorority and a fraternity and what's he going to do with that? And how's he going to, what if he gets pulled over? His driver's license isn't changed yet. And he looks like a boy and his driver's license before we changed it said all the things that you're not sure what's going to happen. And it does, it all works out. And I would say to him, what are you going to do when he goes, I'll get a roommate, Mom, don't worry. He ended up getting online, finding a transgender roommate, and that was the end of it. And they roomed together. And that, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I really didn't know it was that easy. He just made it so easy. I just don't.
And things are
yeah.
I'm sorry. I was saying things are starting to chip away at that age too. My sorority, the sorority I was in college, now has and it was one of the first sororities to have a trans inclusive policy, which made me really proud.
Right. And I think that I saw something that I think we're pretty much the first generation of parents of transgender kids that are coming together and supporting them. Before, I think there was so many of them that were afraid, and not necessarily afraid, but afraid for them. And how would people see you? That I think now it's just, this is how it is and you can accept it. And we've had people that we have told, and I have coworkers and some friends that just don't agree. Like there is, I don't think that they need to agree, because I tell them you don't have to agree with it. You just have to, accept it. But those are the people that you do kind of have to weed out. You do have to, okay, if that's the way you feel, I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to try and change it, but I can't have you around my family and my child. So it's hard, but unfortunately it happens. Not very often.
Going to Jefferson City on a good day is scary. Daniel, what bills were you addressing at the time when you went to speak?
Oh, I think this time, well, Jen Bernstein can tell you Jeff City is an apocalyptic hellscape, I guess is the technical term for it.
That's putting it kindly.
Yeah, really.
Definitely.
I think that day I testified against a trans healthcare ban in the Senate, the sports ban in the House. I might have gotten that reversed. And then I also testified against a bill that would have made, let's see, Plan B, IVF, the IUD, the pill, abortion, and I feel like I'm forgetting something, felony murders in the state of Missouri. So these things all tend to glob around each other, I think, not coincidentally.
They had broadcast those, some of the hearings, especially about the trans. And did you see some of the trans kids that testified? I mean, those kids are amazing.
Amazing.
I don't understand how someone that is watching that, what's your argument?
I'll tell you the scene that stands out to me is I was in the overflow room that day, and one of the young girls, I guess not that young, teenage girl, had gone in and testified and came out and just like collapsed in tears because she'd gone into a committee hearing as this incredibly brave teen, right? Think about how intimidating that is for adults to do that.
Right.
Who sat there and questioned her basic dignity. Yeah. Actually, here a little uplifting story to share. Afterwards, we organized and sent trans pride care packages to every kid who testified, and we got about 40 different Missouri clergy people to sign letters of love and support. We felt like there's been so much damage done in the name of religion to so many of these kids, that we needed to have a different message for these kids. Looks like Nancy has a question. Oh, but you got to unmute.
Unmute.
Sorry, I didn't realize I could do that. In this context, of course, I realize I can do it in the big world. Many people wish I couldn't. But first, I really wanted to thank Rabbi Bogard for calling out the legislators as bullies, and add that I think that's being too kind, and that child abuse is what those people are actually doing, and there's no need to call it by any other name. The question is that realizing that families of trans kids are being put through just such a heart-wrenching, grueling endeavor to go and testify, what can the rest of us do in opposition to that legislation to in some way lighten that load, even if we don't have a transgender child, but are sort of trans adjacent in some other way, or just are furious that our legislature is behaving so badly. And not only really in terms of the legislature, but in terms of helping to normalize transgender to other people that we know. What's the most productive things that we can do?
I think that you can,
not all at once.
yeah, I'm pretty sure you can call whoever your representative is. And if you look, is it PFLAG that has the website? And they do notify you when bills like that are coming up, and who you can call and who your representatives are and who your
Promo, there's a promo, it's called. If you follow promo, they'll tell you who to
Can you put
call.
that on
And we'll
there?
let you know too.
Yeah, put that on there so they can look that up and follow that. That'll tell you when things are happening. I have a friend that's a state rep, and she is our friend. She's definitely one of Jason's advocates there, and she is battling something that is just so hard. But we rode in the first Pride parade with her and her representative. She put her sign on her car. She's just amazing. So that was Jason's first time in the Pride parade, and he actually got to be in it. So there are some amazing representatives. There are some amazing people that are there. But the other ones we just need to, I think you can make phone calls or write letters, or whenever these bills come out and they're up for debate, you can call and oppose them. Is that right, Rabbi?
Yeah, absolutely. Promo is an amazing organization. Shira Berkowitz, who many of us know, works there. Oh yeah, Sue, they're your right, like, aren't you Shira's aunt? Am I remembering that right?
She's my niece, yes.
So Shira's amazing, and we so appreciate Promo. ACLU Missouri, NCJW, right? Like, it's not an accident that NCJW is hosting this today. They and Jen Bernstein have been there over and over again to defend and protect our kids. JCRC. I would also say, talk to your rabbis. Tell them that you want to hear them speak out, or your ministers if you're not Jewish, or the other one that's feels so self-conscious sometimes. I totally get it. But it's really powerful on Zoom, is put your pronouns in every Zoom meeting that you're in, because a few reasons. First of all, it creates the space for trans folk in the room to list their pronouns also. It just does, whether you're talking a physical name tag or Zoom's even easier, right? But the other thing that it does is it lets any trans folk who are in that room, whether they are out or not, know that there are allies in that room, which even if they never say anything, even if there's no more conversation, even if they're not out to that room and never will be, just, right, it's a little easier to breathe, I think.
And then your email signatures too is helpful.
Email signatures, yeah.
And as an addition to the email signatures, I found, I saw it in somebody else's e-sig, they had the word why with the question mark after their pronouns, and it linked to an explanatory video. And I've had because I use the same email personally and professionally, I've had a couple of my clients come back at me like, oh, come on. And at first I was really like freaked out. And then I thought, no, this is really an education opportunity. And I've had some really good conversations about it. So that was, and also just sharing ideas, like when Jen mentioned her sorority, like it never had occurred to me to have conversations with my sorority about that. And that's ridiculous. Of course, it just seems so obvious once you say it.
So Nancy, I think that's the other key too, is thinking about where it is that we have power and influence in our own worlds. Right, this is everything. This is NCJW's mission right here, right? Or their implementation, that figuring out where we have power and using it there. So if it's in your synagogue, or if it's in your workplace, or if it's in your sorority, or we had someone who works, I should have said my congregation, CRC. It's an amazing place with many, many queer folk. It was started to be a home for queer Jews. But like my kid has all of these trans role models that he's growing up with all of the time in a very normalizing kind of way. There was something I was going to say that was connected to something, but I got totally CRC. I don't know. Oh, I know. Maxine, who's our education director, is the past mayor of Olivet. And while Ezra was transitioning, what she did on her own quietly was she reached out to Olivet Athletics so that Olivet Athletics would have an official affirming policy. Not that Olivet Athletics was going to be discriminating against 7-year-olds anyways, but those are the places, right? If we're on boards or committees or whatever it is, if we're on a board of a company.
I've seen forms that you're filling out when you go to the doctor that have asked for pronouns, and I applaud all that. They asked when we went to the pediatrician's office, you know, and do you have a preferred name? Because again, sometimes the name isn't legally changed. And for a while we were going to the doctor and we were being called Jason, and we were having to put down, because his name wasn't changed, you know, under insurance, this is how you have to file it with his birth name. So yeah, I think there's so many, and just education, just people learning about it. It's not, it's more scary about things that you don't know about. So I think the more that you do learn, the less scared, or the less, I don't know, judgmental, or the less that you'll question. That's just, you know, like I do see a lot of things, more things now, probably because I'm looking for them too, but like the forms that you fill out where they ask for the pronouns or they ask for the name, that's very important to some people. I had a friend's comment on that on Facebook. I got very emotional about it because she said, well, I don't understand why they're asking that. They're doctors. They went to school. Aren't they smart? Can't they figure out what gender? And I had to go back and I had to write, I couldn't not comment, but I just wrote, it's important to some people. And I put a sad face because she obviously doesn't get it, but I couldn't pass up that dig that was just unnecessary. I mean,
and one other thing that some of my friends did, and actually my church did, is regarding restrooms. If you have single-use restrooms that don't have a bunch of stalls in them, make them gender neutral. My church, my dad was a United Church of Christ pastor, and the church I go to actually had me come speak, and it was pretty cool. And we had a lot of people come to hear about my book and our daughter, and afterwards all came up to talk, and one of them said, oh, we got those 2 restrooms upstairs. I'm going to run up and take the men and women down and make them gender neutral restrooms. And I have other friends who have said that they talked about that at their work. So if there's just one restroom, why does it have to be male or female? You know, makes people more comfortable. So that's another thing.
Well, I think we're going to have to wrap up. Unfortunately, this has been just such a wonderful conversation. Unfortunately, I think, you know, these bills will be coming back in the Missouri legislature because, you know, it's not like they have, you know, healthcare or anything to tackle or anything, you know, related to COVID or relief, you know, anything like that. They have to punish kids. So if we will be down in Jeff City full force once session starts, we are starting to meet with our legislators. We're holding a bunch of in-district meetings over the summer, and this is going to be a priority issue we would like to talk to them about. And we are going to be contacting people in, if you fall in their districts, to see if you want to come with us. So just let me know if you're interested in doing that. Amy?
Can I also add, you can help us advocate even if you never want to set foot in the apocalyptic hellscape that is Jeff City. One of the easiest ways to do that is on our website at NCJWSTL.org. You can sign up for our 5 ways to advocate email list. And we try to break it down. 5 easy ways you can do something to help bring about the change that you want to see. We do cover a bunch of different topics. Some of the actions will be as simple as, here's this interesting video or educational piece or an article. So sorry, Jen, I just realized that I logged on late, so I didn't hear you talk about this already.
That's
But
okay.
I just want to make sure
better.
people understand that, yeah, because we have a lot of people who do feel intimidated about going in Jeff City, and they certainly have not made that any easier with being mask free and all that kind of stuff. So anyway,
Lisa, put transparent. Do you have Transparent's email or website?
Yes, and absolutely.
Yeah, the Transparent is amazing. It helps in so many ways. I learned I had to figure out how to do a legal name change. There's all kinds of resources on that website. Come to the meetings. The meetings are extremely helpful. We have a kids room, which we're just going back tonight for the first time since last, March, February? Yeah. So we have the parents meet in one room, and then the kids go to another room, and all these kids get together because these kids have friends at school. We understand that. But like I said, to be able to have these kids be with each other and see each other, and they've really bonded, and they're very much looking forward to coming back tonight to see all their friends again, because they all go to different schools. They're all over the place. So, you may be at a school where you have 1 or 2 transgender kids there, where, tonight the whole room will be full of them. So, and I love that they hang out together. Mine was always too old. He never could come. It was 16 and under, and he was like 17, and then they moved it up to 18 or 19, and then he was 20. So he always missed the meetings, but yeah, the Transparent is a very, very good resource for things.
And speaking of Transparent, as a thank you for speaking today, we are going to be making a donation in your honor to Transparent, because we appreciate it so much. This is such an important topic, and it was such a wonderful, wonderful presentation. We just can't thank you enough.
It was excellent. Thank you.
It was. For those who are still here, I will be sending out an evaluation. If you would be kind enough to fill it out for us, it'll take you 5 seconds. And then I'm going to also send out the link. We're going to get it uploaded, if it's okay with the speakers, if we post it on our YouTube page that's on our website. I just wanted to double check and make sure that that's okay with you. And we'll send the link out for those who weren't able to be here today, because I think it's really important for them to see. So thank you all so much. Stay cool out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And take
Thanks for
care.
having us. Thank you so much for having
You're
us.
welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.